Sis, you need to be careful about who you date. Okay, you're cute and have a great personality, but you're a little too easygoing and sometimes spacey. You could get taken advantage of by the wrong kind of guy. You know, you really think you should be with a loser like him. He's just a deadbeat, good for nothing in society. You should break up with him right away. I was misjudged by her younger sister and looked down upon as a deadbeat. Her voice echoed loudly across the floor, drawing the attention of everyone around us. Among them was the face of the hospital director, and I nervously scratched the back of my head, realizing I was in deep trouble. That was a real low point for her younger sister. My name is David. I have a medical license, but I've been out of the country until recently, so I'm currently not employed. Right now, I'm enjoying a relaxed, carefree life. Back when I worked as a surgeon at a university hospital, I was so busy I barely had time to eat or even take a break. Now, I cherish the moments when I can enjoy a warm meal or sleep through the night in my own bed. Today, I had a long-awaited date with my girlfriend, Catherine. Catherine and I went to the same college. We first met on the day of our entrance exams when our seats happened to be next to each other. Even though it was such an important day, I had forgotten my eraser and was panicking. Seeing my distress, she offered me a brand new eraser she had as a spare, saying, "We've both worked so hard to get here, right? We should help each other out at times like this. Please don't hesitate to accept." With that kind gesture, she seemed like an angel to me, and I began to fall for her. Luckily, both Catherine and I passed the exams, and we reconnected at the orientation. She recognized me, and we became friends. From then on, my actions revolved around her. I always made an effort to strike up a conversation and be friends, making sure to sit close to her during lectures. I researched everything she seemed interested in, so we'd have common topics to talk about, and I even studied fashion to make sure I looked my best. The only thing I couldn't change was my height. Of course, I didn't want her to lose interest, so I also worked hard academically. Thanks to my relentless studying, I was able to consistently achieve top grades in our class, and Catherine began to rely on me more and more. And then, it was during the summer of my sophomore year in college. On a trip night with my buddies, I managed to take her for a walk. It was a moonlit night, still a tad humid. The lodging was conveniently located, just a short walk to the beach, so we headed towards the ocean on foot. The nighttime sea was in stark contrast to the bustling daytime. It was tranquil with only the sound of the waves echoing. The modest moonlight reflected on the water, shimmering like stars. It feels like I could watch this forever. It's so mystical and beautiful. I couldn't clearly see Catherine's face in the darkness, but I could tell she was probably smiling gently, and I felt an overwhelming surge of emotions. "Catherine, I love you." I had thought of many scenarios for my confession, but when the moment came, it seems only cliched words came out. When I said those words, she looked at me in surprise. Her big eyes widened even more as she slowly brought both hands to her mouth. "Wait, David, really? Yes, it's true. I fell for you when you lent me an eraser during exams. Please, be my girlfriend," I said, bowing my head and extending my right hand towards her. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few seconds. After a brief pause, when she touched my hand, I abruptly looked up. She seemed momentarily taken aback, but soon greeted me with a smile. "If you're okay with me, I'd love to. I've always admired how dedicated you are, David, and I thought you were cool." "Really?" "Yes, really. Let's make it work." With that, she bowed her head to me. In return, I also bowed, and the two of us found ourselves repeatedly bowing, which became comical, and we shared a laugh. From that day on, we've been together. Over time, because we've been together for so long, our ways of thinking have become similar, and sometimes we're jokingly referred to as an old married couple. but I always find myself falling for Catherine all over again. Even today, seeing her happily holding a cup of hot chocolate, she looks so adorable. Her burgundy knit sweater, her black flared skirt, and her houndstooth scarf all fit her as if they were custom made. Could it be that this entire world exists just for her? Maybe Catherine truly is a goddess. David, what have you been up to since returning to the States? After sharing most of my recent life, Catherine, tilting her head slightly, asked me that. Her gesture was as endearing as a small animal. I wanted to shout to the world how cute she is. Suppressing such thoughts deep within my heart, I answered nonchalantly. Well, I haven't settled down yet, so I'll be living in a hotel for a while. Can't really splurge since I have no income. After all, I'm unemployed now. You actually call yourself unemployed? She laughed amusingly at that. I think her smile is a national treasure. No, a world treasure. I wish I could buy it with all my wealth. I'm not working, so no income. As I made that self-deprecating joke, she laughed. Such precious moments. I wish they could last forever. But life isn't always that kind. Catherine. Suddenly, a voice clearly aimed at her rang out. When both of them turned towards the voice, a woman stood there with a stern expression. She came right next to the table where we were having coffee and started talking to Catherine. Sis, what a coincidence. A date. Oh, Heather, truly unexpected. Yes, we're on a date right now. This is David. David, this is my younger sister, Heather. Your younger sister. Nice to meet you, Heather. Reaching out to shake her hand, she openly looked at him with disdain and ignored his gesture. Huh, she's ignoring me. What should I do with this outstretched hand? You need to be careful about the men you date. You are pretty and have a good personality, but you're a bit naive. It would be terrible if you deceived by some shady guy. What? David is not like that. I overheard your conversation earlier. He's unemployed and has no income, right? He's not even handsome and is short. I don't get why you're with him. That was just a joke, you know. He's actually. Anyway, I will never accept him. I'll do everything I can to interfere. I have an appointment, so I have to go. Goodbye. Saying this, she glared at me and left the cafe. She had a takeaway coffee in hand, so she must have just stopped by for a moment. Her fast-paced walk seemed courageous. Heather can be a bit strong-willed, but she's very talented. She's younger than us. She gets good grades, and she's starting her internship at a university hospital next week. Oh, I see. Considering she's younger than us, Heather must be a medical student. You two seem close. We are. She's my adorable little sister. I'm sure the misunderstanding will be cleared up, so please get along with her. I nodded at her cheerful demeanor. It felt like I was looking at the Virgin Mary, or so I whimsically thought. A few days after my date with Catherine, I had a reason to visit the university hospital where Catherine works. I used to work here, and to add to that, I graduated from the affiliated college of this hospital. It feels like home to me. My business was over quickly, and as I waited in the elevator lobby, thinking of seeing Catherine and heading home, a group of individuals in white coats approached from behind. It seems they were medical interns with their supervising doctors. I recognized some of the doctors, but among the interns, there was one familiar face. She noticed me and exclaimed, "Oh, why are you here?" The one pointing and shouting at me was Catherine's younger sister, Heather. Pointing at someone is considered rude, I thought, trying to muster a smile. I couldn't tell her the real reason I was here, so as I was thinking of a way to sidestep the question, Heather continued her rant. Did you come to see Catherine? What are you, a stalker? Jobless, ugly, and a stalker? How low can you go? I won't let you near her, you criminal. Hey, calm down, Heather. Don't call me by my name. Just because my sister is kind and can be easily deceived doesn't mean she's calling for a man like you. Just go home and be jobless. My sister deserves someone smart, hiring, tall, handsome, kind, and capable of doing house chores. The exact opposite of you. Hey, stop it, Heather. This man is. Stay away from my sister. If you keep panning around, I'll call the police. Oh, I don't have my phone because I'm on duty. Is this your doing? What are you talking about, Heather? Calm down, please. You seem really confused. One of my former colleagues, a doctor, tried to intervene, but Heather kept glaring at me. Look, this man used to be Dr. Abbott, a surgeon at this hospital. What? A doctor? Heather looked back and forth between me and the former colleague, surprised. But didn't you say he was jobless and had no income? Well, I had just returned from Germany and hadn't settled into a job yet, so technically, I was without an income at that time. But even if you had a medical license, if you didn't have a job, you were unemployed, right? That's true, but David will be rejoining our staff as of today. The person who said this, emerging from behind, was the hospital's director. This elderly gentleman with a laid-back demeanor handed me a paper while smiling. David, you left this behind. Here's your appointment letter. See, it's dated today for your return to surgery. The interns should remember his face. He's a brilliant surgeon who's pulled off numerous complex surgeries. Watching him operate is a great learning experience. Indeed, the reason I came to this university hospital today was to work here again. The director, Johnson, had graciously sent me off to Germany and ensured I had a place when I returned. The director always believed in my skills and tolerated my whims. But I owe a lot to Director Johnson, and I need to repay those favors. Hey, Heather, you wanted to be a surgeon, right? You'll be owing a lot to him. Better thank him now while you can. The doctor standing next to Heather said, patting her shoulder. Heather, in shock, murmured, I can't believe it. Well, it can't be helped. I hate to say it about myself, but I kind of look unreliable, and some even say I look just like a student. But no matter how good a surgeon he is, he's been neglecting my sister for so long. I know Catherine's been lonely, so I wanted to see what kind of guy her boyfriend was and followed you, and you seemed so unreliable. I'd been neglecting Catherine. It hurts when she says that. Heather probably loves her sister, Catherine, very much. That's why she's so aggressive towards me. If her sister's seemingly neglectful boyfriend turned out to be unemployed, it'd make sense for her to be upset. After all, I was the one who convinced Catherine to stay behind while I went to Germany alone. But it was just as I was about to speak. A chime, different from the usual announcement in the hospital, echoed throughout. All the doctors present turned pale. Code blue, all medical staff, please assemble at the cardiology department. Hearing this, I immediately ran. A code blue is broadcasted when a critical emergency occurs and immediate medical attention is needed. Several other doctors and nurses also rushed towards the location. Of course, I wanted to save a life, but I was also filled with a bad premonition. Catherine was visiting the hospital today for a regular checkup because of her heart condition. I thought I'd see her after finishing my own tasks since medical exams usually involve a lot of waiting. Catherine has a rare heart condition, so she needs to undergo regular checkups. There are many patients at the university hospital, so I was hoping it wasn't her. Even though I felt that way, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. And as it turned out, my hunch was spot on. Catherine. Hang in there, Catherine. It was undoubtedly Catherine that the nurse was desperately performing CPR on. She had a ghost white face, with her eyes firmly closed. She seemed utterly worn out, and her breathing appeared quite labored. Catherine, what happened? I asked a nearby nurse about the situation. She collapsed suddenly after her examination. We've been performing chest compressions for the past 2 minutes. The AED is ready. Got it, let me take over. Please do. Catherine, wake up, Catherine. I took over the CPR from the nurse and kept calling out to her. But there was no change in Catherine's condition. The medical team was bustling around us. It's all to save a life. My sister, no way, why? Heather, who seemed to have arrived later, was also there. But I couldn't pay attention to her right now. I desperately called out to Catherine while performing CPR. The AED is here. A doctor rushed over with an AED and promptly began to set it up. It's ready. Step back, Dr. Abbott. An electric jolt was administered with a beeping sound. But the situation remained unchanged. Catherine, I continued CPR while waiting for the next electric shock. Administering shock, step back. After the second shock, Catherine showed a faint coughing response. She's back. A response meant her heartbeat had returned. A wave of relief washed over everyone present, but it was too soon to relax. David, the operation room is ready. Can you do it? Absolutely. Let's do it. His calm demeanor from earlier was John. The serious expression came from Director Johnson, the hospital director. Director Johnson was aware of Catherine's condition and had allowed me to continue my medical duties while also treating her. He'd consistently updated me on the progress of her condition and her test results. Of course, we'd obtained her permission first. Catherine's condition was rare in the States, so it was largely unclear how to treat it. The only treatment was symptomatic, and it was agonizing to just watch her heart weaken over time. She had accepted her illness and merely offered resigned smiles. Then, I found a paper from Germany detailing similar cases that had been completely cured with surgery. It was a ray of hope for me. If there was a chance to cure Catherine's illness, I'd do whatever it took. Without a second thought, I reached out to a hospital in Germany. And in no time, my trip to Germany was set. However, Catherine was hesitant. I appreciate your feelings, David, but I might not have much time left. It'd be too lonely without you by my side. I don't want to be alone. Please, stay with me. Let's create a few more memories. I wish you wouldn't say that. You mean everything to me, and without you, my life would be pointless. So please, I'm begging you, don't give up on your life. You're a doctor, right? Doctors shouldn't give up on lives. I promise I'll save you. Just hold on a little longer. Please, stay strong for me. After an emotional exchange filled with tears, Catherine finally relented. She recognized my medical skills and achievements. She said she believed in me. David, I'll be waiting. I believe in you. Just hang in there. I'm going to learn everything I can as fast as possible. Take care of yourself until then. Okay, you too, don't wear yourself out. A year and a half passed. It took longer than I'd anticipated, but I gained surgical experience in Germany and conducted research on similar cases. With newfound confidence in saving Catherine's life, I returned to the States. What do you mean, surgery? Is my sister really that bad? I thought she was just feeling a bit under the weather. Pushing through the crowd, Heather approached me. Heather looked pale, on the verge of tears. Understandably so, given her beloved sister had just suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. She probably didn't want to worry you, so she didn't tell you everything. I believe she had faith that she'd get better. Don't worry, I'll fix this. That's why I went all the way to Germany. I didn't cross the ocean just on a whim. The words I told Heather were also reminders for myself. I want you to contact your parents. It's all right. How can a doctor not believe in the vitality of a patient? Your sister, Catherine, she's strong, right? Yes, I know that even without you telling me. My sister won't be defeated by this. I trust you. Please, save her. Yes, I'll definitely save her. With determination in my heart, I hurried to the operating room. I went through my pre-surgery routine, calming my nerves. Changing, wearing a mask, washing my hands. I double-checked all the essentials and looked over the medical staff. Let's begin the surgery. The operation took a long 10 hours, but it was successful. A few weeks after the surgery, I peeked into Catherine's room. There was Heather, dressed in casual clothes, chatting away happily. "Catherine, how are you feeling?" "I'm recovering very well. Everyone's been kind, and it's comfortable. It's just a bummer I can't walk around much." "Well, your heart did stop once. Just bear with it for a bit. By the way, Heather, are you taking a break from your training?" "I'm off today. I'll be in surgery from tomorrow. Take care, big bro." It seems like Heather's perception of me has changed since that incident. She appears to appreciate me more. Moreover, she has started coming to me with questions about her training. Our communication has improved, and I'm relieved. I'm getting thirsty. The only place to get her drink is the convenience store downstairs. It'll take a while, but I'll go get something. You too, take your time," Heather said, exiting the room with a mischievous smile. I couldn't help but smile at her casual thoughtfulness. Having nothing pressing to attend to, I took a seat next to Catherine's bed. There were moments I thought things might go south, but I'm glad. "It's all thanks to you, David. From the day we first met during our exams, when I only lent you an eraser, to now, saving my life. If it weren't for you, my life would have been entirely different. Thank you." Saying this, Catherine took my hand. Her hand felt warm, a reaffirmation of life. I felt a surge of happiness and gently squeezed her hand in return. "If it weren't for you, Catherine, I wouldn't have been living my life this passionately. Whether it was college studies or becoming a doctor, I pushed through wanting to impress you. You're the driving force of my life. So, we both can't do without each other, huh? Yeah, please, live long." "You too, David." We laughed together. Later, Catherine made a full recovery and returned to work. She consults her health but lives each day at her own pace. The beautiful and kind doctor is popular in the outpatient department as always. Heather is diligently working on her medical training. She was inspired by Catherine and chose the path of becoming a doctor. She's hardworking and seems to have a knack for it. However, she still tends to jump to conclusions, and there's room for improvement. I genuinely hope she does her best. As for me, my days are packed. Director Johnson had facilitated my trip to Germany. In return, he often hints at that favor, keeping me on my toes. Well, I do feel indebted and want to repay the kindness. Despite the ups and downs, I'm glad I never gave up. My determination, which even took me to Germany, successfully saved Catherine. But it wasn't just my effort, it was Catherine's will to live, Heather and her family's support, help from the director and others around us. It made me realize how much love surrounded Catherine. But of course, I believe I love her the most. Every day with the one you love isn't something to be taken for granted. So, I want to cherish each day. I won't ever give up on our happiness. With that thought, I swore to give my all today and every day. My name's Bob. I am a sidelined employee working for a certain publishing company. This year, I'm hitting the big 40 and still haven't settled down. Now, that's not to say I've never had a girlfriend. I had one back in college. We met at a literary club, bonding over a shared love for a particular novelist, which led us to dating. After graduating, we stayed close since we worked near each other, and our relationship was as solid as ever. Never had a fight with her, and I used to think, I want us to always be this close, maybe even get married someday. Turns out, I was the only one thinking that. She started getting closer to a senior colleague at her job, and our meetings started becoming less frequent. By my second year in the workforce, she broke things off. A buddy of mine later told me that she had fallen for some handsome, high-flying executive at the IT firm she worked at. A guy whose looks and paycheck were leagues above mine. In the end, Women choose men based on their looks and money. After losing my confidence, I never got a girlfriend again, and in fact, I've lived without even showing a hint of interest in women. However, I was liked by colleagues, and I was very satisfied with my relationships at work. Having left my previous job in my mid-20s and joined this company midway, it's been over a decade. Even though I'm not in a prominent position, covering for my junior colleagues when they make a mistake is a piece of cake. Sometimes, after work, I'd go out for drinks and listen to my colleagues' complaints, offering them advice, so they really relied on me. Then, one day, the day after I had helped cover up a mistake for a colleague, he ran up to me, exclaiming, "We've got news. Did you hear? We're getting a new employee from the headquarters, and it's a young woman at that." Seeing the colleague getting all excited about a young woman, I gently placed both my hands on his shoulders and said, "Easy there, calm down." Not long after he caught his breath, our boss walked into the office with the mentioned young woman. "Starting today, Catherine will be the manager of this division. I'm Catherine. Nice to meet all of you." As she greeted and gave a slight nod, a round of applause began, growing louder. In the midst of the clapping, the same junior colleague beside me whispered, "I heard Catherine used to be a department head at the headquarters." Hearing that, I thought to myself, impressive for someone so young. Later, my boss told me the same thing, confirming that the rumors were indeed true. With a track record of rising to a managerial position at such a young age, she worked even harder than the rumors suggested, swiftly handling tasks and showcasing her prowess. Even though she was younger, she became my superior. She was friendly and highly competent, quickly becoming a natural fit in our department. However, there was one thing that bugged me. I often felt her gaze from her distant desk. It wasn't a flirtatious look or a look of disdain, but something indescribable. At first, I thought she was puzzled by me, a middle-aged man still in a peripheral role. One day, after this had been going on for a few days, she approached my desk and asked if I could prepare a document for her by the next afternoon. Given how capable she was, I figured she could probably do it faster herself. However, once I understood the simple content she needed, I realized she must be so swamped with work due to her efficiency and decided to help. So, I said to her, "I can get this done today. I'll bring it over once it's ready," and turned back to my computer. But she didn't move. When I looked up, her mouth was agape, a look of shock on her face. "What's wrong?" I asked. She seemed to snap out of it and said, "Oh, nothing. Thank you," before finally heading back to her desk. Later that day, as promised, I submitted the completed document just before the end of work hours. She looked even more shocked than before, glancing back and forth between the document and me. I braced myself, thinking she might criticize me for not doing a good enough job. Amazing. Those were the first words she finally managed to utter. Then she continued, "Who exactly are you?" Apparently, what had taken her aback was the impeccable and advanced nature of my presentation. A younger colleague, looking quite curious after witnessing the scene, was about to approach when another colleague, sensing the tension between me and her, took the younger one's hand and said, "We'll be heading out now," and left the office. After seeing them off, I met her gaze and responded, "Just a sidelined employee, really." But with a look of incomprehension, she blurted out, "Hey," as she looked up at me with a puzzled expression. She then said, "No offense, but this French document isn't just something you can merely translate. Even folks at our headquarters find it intricate, and yet you've compiled it so flawlessly. It's unbelievable." While she continued to alternate her gaze between the document and me in sheer astonishment, I explained. "In truth, I studied abroad for a year during college. I studied French like my life depended on it. Interacting with native speakers during that time boosted my proficiency even more." Hearing my explanation, her expression of shock remained unchanged. "I get that you know French, but this document contains information that isn't just French-based. For a typical employee, translating non-French parts takes time, but you've done it so quickly. Just how many languages can you comprehend? I simply responded with, about 5, stating only the fact. At my brief response, she looked even more startled, almost as if she'd seen a ghost. I can't believe someone of your caliber isn't in a top position here or at the headquarters, she said, holding her head in disbelief. Simply stating the truth and receiving such a reaction made me feel like I had done something wrong. An awkward silence ensued. After a brief pause, she looked at me with a smile, as if to shake off the previous tension. She then began to reveal the true reason behind requesting the document from me. To be honest, ever since my first day here, I've been astounded by your work ethic, Bob. Given your age and the quality of your work, it wouldn't be surprising if you were making at our headquarters. I always wondered why, hence, to gauge your capabilities, I had you work on this intricate document. From what I've heard, Bob, you left your previous job, joined this company midway, and have been in a low-profile position for over a decade. Don't you ever want to climb the corporate ladder? When she said that to me, I wondered if other colleagues had the same doubts about me. But I wasn't too interested in things like promotions or fancy titles. When I mentioned this, she laughed and said, "You're an interesting guy." From that day on, the difficulty of the tasks given to me increased dramatically. And later on, she asked me to accompany her to a meeting at the headquarters. Although reluctant, I agreed and headed to the headquarters. It was my first visit to the headquarters since my mid-career interview, and I was a bit nervous. The meeting was about an upcoming business book for young people. Before the meeting started, I had thought I'd just attend and not voice my opinions, but once it began, I couldn't suppress my thoughts. Before I knew it, I was suggesting various ideas, and most of the employees at the headquarters nodded in agreement, their faces showing astonishment. The CEO was also present, and after the meeting, I was called into his office. I went with Catherine. Well, Catherine was right. You're really talented, Bob. We shouldn't let talent like yours go to waste. I'd really like you to join our editorial team at the headquarters and fully utilize your abilities. Taken aback by this sudden offer, I said, "Me, really?" The CEO cut me off, covering my hands with his own, and firmly said, "I'm counting on you." I still wanted to decline, but I felt I couldn't let down the CEO with the expectation he poured into that handshake. I murmured to myself, "I'll give it my best shot," and then replied, "Understood." I was transferred to the editorial department shortly after. When Catherine was transferred from the headquarters to my previous office, everyone was wondering why such a competent person was transferred. But this time, the looks I received were the exact opposite, cold and skeptical. This old guy is getting transferred to the headquarters now. Wasn't he just a regular office worker all this time? Is he up for it? When I first transferred, I often heard such comments. But I couldn't let that get me down. I had to deliver results here, to meet the expectations of the CEO and Catherine. From then on, I worked tirelessly, paying no mind to the stares and whispers. The hard work paid off. Eventually, even the employees who had once looked down on me began to recognize my contributions. The sense of fulfillment in this environment was something I never experienced in my previous position. I have grown fond of this workplace. One day, after getting used to my role at the headquarters, I was having lunch at my desk. While eating lunch at my desk, I got an email from Catherine. "Want to go out for drinks after work today?" Thinking about it, since I transferred to the headquarters, I hadn't really hung out with Catherine outside of official meetings. I owe her a lot for how far I've come, so I thought it'd be good to go as a way of saying thanks. When I arrived at the designated bar, Catherine had already started drinking. Catherine noticed me and waved her hand with a relaxed expression that she would not show at work. "I've heard from the CEO and some folks at the office. Sounds like you're doing great, Bob." "Well, not really. I'm just finally getting used to the job and the office vibe. It's been busy every day." After giving each other an update, she asked, "Can I ask you one question?" she asked with a slightly different, more serious look in her eyes than before. I didn't say anything but just nodded in response. "Why were you, Bob, who is so talented, settled in such a backbench position?" Being a lightweight drinker, I was already tipsy after only drinking half a mug of beer. Maybe because of that, I started sharing a story I'd never told any of my colleagues before. I actually graduated from Harvard, but on the resume I submitted to this company, I listed a different university. I couldn't see her face, but I could guess she probably had the same shocked expression she showed when she managed to understand a challenging document in a short time. Ignoring her reaction, I continued my story. In my previous company, which was over a decade ago, I was brimming with enthusiasm from the get-go. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder and be among the elites. Not only did I have the ambition, but I was also one of the top performers among my peers. For a while, my colleagues were just as driven as I was. Every day was competitive and challenging, but it felt fulfilling. However, at some point, jealousy began to seep in from my peers. Before I knew it, they'd say things like, "Of course, he can do it. He's a Harvard grad," and I found myself taking on their work as if they were pushing it onto me out of spite. Gradually, the mental pressure took its toll, and I fell into depression. The next thing I knew, I had quit my job. People had such high expectations because of my Harvard background, thinking I could handle anything. I began to wonder if it was better to pretend to be less competent to avoid the extra stress. That's why I hid the fact that I was a Harvard grad and lied on my resume. Once I finished my story, I looked over at her. She seemed more engaged than I had expected, and I felt reassured. "That sounds tough. I kind of get it now." Well, honestly, pretending to be incompetent and being a sidelined employee at this company was easy at first. But if I hadn't met you, I might have just coasted until retirement without ever feeling this fulfilled. While I initially felt out of place when I transferred to our headquarters, now I really enjoy working with my colleagues and the environment. I owe a lot to you, Catherine. I can't thank you enough. Expressing my gratitude was a big reason I came here today, so being able to convey it made me feel refreshed. As for her, she looked a bit bashful and humbly said, "Oh, please, I didn't do much," though her expression hinted she appreciated the compliment. We chatted for a bit longer before she suddenly remembered, "Oh, right. I invited you here today because there's someone I want you to meet, Bob." Apparently, this individual is a professor, also a Harvard grad like me. I heard that he is a well-known professor in the publishing world, and that books written by him are sure to become bestsellers. He can be a bit stubborn and difficult, but maybe he'll listen if it's you, Bob. A few days later, Catherine and I went to meet the professor. "Hello," Catherine greeted as she opened the door. The professor, seated and engrossed in a newspaper, looked up with an exasperated expression and said, "You again. I have someone I'd like to introduce today." Saying this, Catherine gave me a strong push from behind to prompt me forward. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Bob from TZ Publishing." Despite Bob being a Harvard grad, he listed a different college on his resume and was sidelined at his job until recently. Her spilling the beans about my past right off the bat made me bow my head in surprise and embarrassment. However, the professor's reaction was unexpected. "Now, isn't that intriguing?" he remarked, breaking into a cheerful laugh. "Well, let's at least hear what you have to say. You came to discuss publishing, didn't you?" I had been on guard because Catherine had warned me about his stubborn and difficult nature, but now that the ice was broken, I felt relieved. Prompted by the professor, Catherine and I took seats across the table from him. I was anxious about the possibility of him diving into technical topics I wouldn't be able to answer. However, our conversation remained casual. We chatted about me, about Catherine, and touched a bit on the publishing industry, losing track of time. It was evident the professor had warmed up to me. "Man, Bob, you're not only entertaining but also sharp. If you'd be the lead editor, I'd consider publishing with your agency." "Really?" "Yes. But if we're doing this, we're aiming for a bestseller. I don't want to compromise on the content, so give it your all, Bob. I'm counting on you." And with that, I had won his favor, and just as Catherine had hoped, we got to discuss publishing. "We did it, Bob. With your persuasion, even that stubborn professor was moved." I modestly replied, "It wasn't all me. I didn't do much, but deep down, I was ecstatic like never before. I couldn't believe I'd have the chance to work with such an esteemed individual like the professor in my life. The thought alone made me look forward to each new day." The business book for young adults that the professor and I collaborated on was a massive success. I was convinced that, with the professor, we could produce future classics, and so I delved even deeper into my work. That effort was never in vain. The books the professor and I released kept hitting the bestseller list, and my presence in the editorial department had grown immensely compared to before. And when I say it had grown, I don't just mean in terms of prominence. The sense of fulfillment I felt, something I would never have experienced in my previous job or back when I was just another face in the crowd, was incomparable to the past. Later on, my relationship with Catherine evolved from work colleagues to dating. Now, we're married and have been blessed with a beautiful daughter. My life, which was once set on coasting through average days until retirement, underwent a significant transformation after meeting Catherine and the professor. I hated my job because of my excellence, and at one point I even gave up my hard-earned title of Harvard grad. However, I was able to change thanks to encounters with people who could be described as fate. I was just lucky to have a fateful encounter, but when I see someone wanting to change their situation now, I want to tell them this: don't fear change, take action. Just waiting for an opportunity might mean you only get your chance after turning 40, or perhaps you might never find it in your lifetime. While 40 isn't too late, it's always better to grab chances sooner. If you seize opportunities early, you can enjoy longer and more fulfilling days. To those who are content with their current state, I'd like to ask, is that truly the best you can do? Thanks to the professor, there's no denying that I've become known as an editor with a string of bestsellers. But since the day the professor told me he liked my work, I've poured my heart and soul into my job day and night. I can proudly say that this hard work, while modest, has definitely contributed to the success of those bestsellers. Because with each book, I've given it my all. So, take a moment to reflect if your current situation is truly the result of giving your very best, and if you feel there's more you can achieve, that you are not at your limit, then I urge you to act now. Effort is always rewarded in one way or another. If my life, where I even falsified my education to become a sidelined employee, can change so drastically from just a few encounters, so can yours.